it's a movement that we started to create awareness about mental health. And when I say awareness, is because mental health and mental health illnesses are a taboo in India, and I'm sure it is like that the world over, but particularly more so in India. It is a complete stigma. It's a situation which is it's like a white elephant in the room. It's there, but one doesn't want to talk about it. So we've started this movement to alleviate the stigma around mental health, so that people are firstly become aware about it, and then they realize that it's okay to have an illness, but the more important thing is to seek help. Because if you don't seek help, not only does it really hinder your life, it is a very debilitating illness. It can obviously, as we all know, ultimately it can lead to suicide if it's not caught in the right time and not managed well. But on the other side, if it is managed well and if it is caught in time, the prognosis is so good that with the right medication, with the right kind of interventions, you can lead a perfectly healthy life. So the messaging is that it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay not to seek help. And I also want to put across that you can be a highly functioning individual and yet have depression, or you can have any other such mental illness. So it's really okay to have it, but you still you have a right to lead a very holistic and a very productive life. So that is what is MPower. What got me into it is I think my own experiences back home. A lot of us lead very pressured lives. We all have different challenges to deal with. I also lead 2 schools. So I've seen mental illness amongst children from very close quarters. And one realized that there's a dire need to start a movement like that, also to offer clinical services to people who need it, so psychological as well as psychiatric. Because again, even the resources, the doctors, psychiatrists, therapists back home are very few in number. And plus the quality is not as good as it should be. So that was the genesis of MPower. And coming to the point of what would I do if it was not MPower, I really don't know, because I did start 2 schools and I'm very, very passionate about education. But yes, I think MPower is my calling. So I don't know what I would have done, but I know I would have definitely been in this. So that question doesn't even arise really.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Continuing the healthcare topic, I would like to move to Curevac. Dr. Hoerr, maybe you could talk a little bit what is Curevac doing and describe all activities and how you started it.
Yeah, so Curevac was founded quite a long time ago, 2000, out of my PhD when I was at the University of Tübingen. And I was so thrilled because what I was using was a new molecule called messenger RNA, and messenger RNA was never gotten into the clinic, never gotten into clinical trials. I was just, working with that. And I was thinking, it's so interesting to see that you can use the molecule to give the information to the body to cure itself. So the information-driven business was the real challenge. What I've seen is a complete disruption. Normally you do protein synthesis, so the pharma industries, they do chemical synthesis or protein synthesis, and that's where we are. Nobody thinks really about giving the body the information. Maybe Chinese medicine is doing that, but not in a kind of science, Western science rational. So having this tool in my hands, I was then deciding to start my own business to get into clinical trials as soon as possible. So we were also working on pharmaceutical production of these molecules, and therefore we tried to raise money, which wasn't easy at that time. And then in 2005, I met Mr. Hopp, Dietmar Hopp, the SAP founder of Germany. And for the first time, I felt really the passion of him as well to use IT and use IT to cure diseases. So he was the first investor investing into Curevac, and so far he invested more than 200 million euros into us. So altogether we have more than 450 million euros invested into our company. So it's quite a heavy investment needed to push these things forward. But it's a real disruption because we can apply this to many different areas, to vaccines, to oncology, as well enzyme replacement, rare diseases. Since the platforming's like that, it's kind of language. So messenger RNA encodes for the language. You can talk to the body. and the body can use this information to make its own proteins. That's the thing. And you need just only one production plant, because the molecule is always the same in terms of chemical composition. Just the information is different on it. And that's so fascinating. And meanwhile, I think there's quite large competition as well. So 10 years after we founded, 2010, something like that, many other companies also raised. And there's a new momentum now to disrupt and to revolutionize, we can say, healthcare.
And the meaning of Curevac, it means cure plus vaccines, or?
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
I would ask same question to Mrs. Birla. Same. What do you think about this MPower? How did you come up with the name MPower?
So, you know, it's quite interesting actually. So, I always wanted the word empower, because when I think of empower, itself is very empowering. And that's the whole theme and the whole idea behind even what we're doing, is to empower individuals to feel good about themselves. But I didn't want just empower in its normal avatar. So we've been, my family and I, we'd been brainstorming, and then one of us just came up with the word with the letter M.
Okay.
So M standing for mind and mental, mind matters. So that's how we came about with MPower, so mind power. It could be sort of thought of it as like that as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now we heard about the specialist experts, say, in the field. Now I would like Mr. Frank Otto to give the overview of impact entrepreneurship and say what drives impact entrepreneurship. How do you imagine that? Why people do that?
I think every entrepreneurship is an impact entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is solving problems. Yeah, you see some problems, some things are too expensive, so you think about to make it cheaper, easier for people to get, or so it's a very simple thing. That's very often that a business starts and is solving a problem, and and for me, I think we come now in a new stage of doing business. So I already mentioned it yesterday. When I start a business or I go into a business, I'm aware that I'm not alone. And if I'm successful, somebody else will be not that successful anymore. Yeah, because it's a competition. And and I try, you can't do that always, but I try to overview what I'm doing, how I'm doing, what can I do with the others. I give you an example, but I did. There was a newspaper in Hamburg, it was in trouble. Lose money, and it was over 200 million or something like that, what they lost. And and that was a minute when the company which owned this newspaper, which was a very big publishing house, they wanted to get rid of, and they want to sell it, and so they sold it to me, and I took a partner with me. And everybody was thinking about what's going on now. We will cut this, we will cut that, we will cut that. So how I would say,
Resizing the business, making it smaller and smaller?
Yes, because the most control-oriented people would have done that. Yeah. So that's what you learn on a business school, but I never have been on a business school. So I did a lot of mistakes. My first mistake was I raised the price. I didn't know that there is a speech between the publishers that the market leader has to raise the price, and then the others can do that. I didn't know that, so I raised the price, and it was successful. Because I wrote in the newspaper, we raise the price because we want to make the paper better. And the people believed. And I didn't get rid of people. Yes, I changed a lot. The photography was made by film. There was people working whole day through developing films and things like that. Of course, we changed that into digital and all these things. But what I did with all the stuff which I set free, they had nothing to do. I did two things. The one I brought into the digital business, and we became leader in the online awareness. And the other thing what I did, it was just a crazy idea. I said, give every day when our newspaper is on the market, we have to have one benefit. So we add every day an extra on. So, and that's where I put the people, and they developed all these extras, and so that I didn't have to get rid of stuff, and we were successful from the very first minute on, because we raised the price, and we nearly lost no customers, and I did that for 4 years. Then I sold, because I knew that the future of newspaper is not the easiest one. Yeah. But if you can see a problem for an entrepreneur, it's easy, because that is what we do. We focus on problems, and we solve the problems through getting an idea, a new idea, put something new in it.
And did you believe that this newspaper will become successful, or you just did it and didn't focus on short-term game and etc.?
In this case, because I sold to my partner. He wants to get rich, which is, it's a nice idea, but he sold this newspaper very, very expensive to a British company, and then they had the mess because they paid too much. So now it's owned by Cologne. So it became sold several times in the meantime. And my partner, he did something he shouldn't do. He stepped into a very, very big publishing house, which is publishing books, but he has not the majority there. And the shareholder of the majority didn't give him any chance, and it was very known in Germany because they made news nearly every day, and was a big fight. And in the end, he lost the fight, and he got something. He was ill, sick, and he died, which is poor story. So the rest of his life was not a good life. It was a life sitting together every day with lawyers. Not every plan works.
That's clear. I like the point that you tried to simplify. Like, we tried to find problems and solve them. And I would like to ask Dr. Hoerr, you tried to solve a problem also. What did change in your life after becoming a unicorn? It's like you saw your name in unicorns list. So do you believe that it is part of like your hard work behind, or sometimes it comes just with luck?
Well, yeah. So it's both for sure. Yeah. So you always need luck, but you also need a kind of positive thinking to attract power flowing into the company, flowing into the people. You have to, build a team which is really capable to move things along, and you have to change a lot, growing your business from a startup into a kind of a large entity. That's also important. So you have to do a lot of decisions which are not easy. Also regarding talking to people, what to change and how to change. So luckily we could engage with Gates Foundation. So when we were producing the vaccines, when we were showing the first data of our vaccines, Bill Gates himself was very interested to know more about us, and so we met him in Paris here, not far from here, talking about the capabilities of this revolutionary approach. He likes it very much because, as you know, Gates Foundation wants to help the poorer countries, and they need to have cheap vaccines and also temperature-stable vaccines, no cold chain, so it shouldn't be any fridge there, things like that, affordable vaccines, and also various vaccine against various diseases, rotavirus, for example. Lots of children die because of rotavirus, and you have to wipe this out. So I think this was also like the meeting with Ingmar Hoerr a couple of years before, kind of personal meeting where we could speak from an entrepreneur to another entrepreneur. It's different. If you speak to venture capitalists, you know, it's kind of different approach. If you speak to entrepreneurs, you directly come to the essence, how to do it, what kind of resources, how to go, things like that. So we got these questions, and then he decided to invest into Curevac. He made his largest investment, Gates Foundation made his largest investment equity into Curevac, and also we got non-dilutive funding, that means funding for the project. And the contract says that we develop together, and then Gates Foundation provides the poor countries, we can provide the Western countries. So I think it's a win-win situation, which is very important. And from that, I think we became the unicorn status. And to be frank, you know, I really don't care, I have to say. I care really to push things forward and get things to the market. And apart from you, I think we are not profitable, so we really have still to move on and still to take the risk in struggling with nature, but also taking benefit of the nature. Yeah, we always have to go along nature and to see how it goes. So we can't predict much. We can predict quite a lot, but not everything. So, and the breakthrough for me will be when we get the first products to the patients and get it out there and do an impact on society, on humanity. That's the real impact. So therefore, unicorn is helpful. We need to have to raise money. We always continuously have to raise money. All the biotechs, they have to do it since we compete with big pharmas, with big pharma pitches as well. But we also collaborate with big pharmas, take a benefit advantage. So money flows in from pharmas as well. But still, it's a big business. Huge of money is needed, but you can do a real impact with that.
Yeah, this is really very insightful. My next question would be more about life experiences, as you talked. Mrs. Birla, what's the most memorable event in your life dealing with this MPower? What do you remember? Like you will never forget that.
So we're not very old. We're just about 2.5 years old. But I think, we've got so many good success stories of children or adolescents or even adults who have been very ill, on the verge of suicide, and they've turned around. The care that we have offered, the care that our team has offered, has actually turned them around. I think that is what gives a lot of happiness and a sense of satisfaction. So just to tell you one story which happened very recently. We had a child coming, 17-year-old child. She came in for therapy, and during the course of the therapy, in front of the therapist, she attempted to kill herself. And now all this is happening while session is on at the center. And the therapist obviously immediately first had to fight her, because she had to stop her from consuming. She was trying to overdose on some things that she had in her bag. So she had to first stop her from doing that, and by then she'd already consumed it. So we had to rush her to the hospital. Unfortunately, even the best hospitals in the city do not have psychiatric wards. So they first refused to take her. And then we had to kind of convince the hospital that at least, give her the wash and do whatever that needs to be done to get her out of the danger zone. Then we'll sort of tackle it. Of course, she did get better after a few days. So that was a really big, it was very shocking. It was very sad to see it. And yet at the same time, of course, it was, it got us a lot of satisfaction and contentment that we were actually able to help this child sort of turn around.
Yeah. And this is really something that we have to all remember. Yesterday we were talking with you also about Africa case, how people just kill their kids because of mental health. And I believe we need a lot of entrepreneurs like you who is specialized in different fields like mental health and other related stuff. I would like to ask the same question to Mr. Frank Otto. Maybe you have something in your mind about the history of doing business what is the most memorable action or event you remember?
Yeah, it was with my first startup, I would say, because that was radio business, and in the radio business, you at that time it was so that you only get the figures once a year. So everybody in this business waits for this day. So, and I did something which the market didn't understand, because I changed a radio station and targeted it to a very young audience, and everybody was laughing.
Sorry, it was Kiss FM, you mean?
No. It was OK Radio. That
OK
was
Radio.
In the
okay.
80s. It was in the 80s.
Okay.
So it was my first successful. And the day when the figures came, and it was so, we didn't believe it, because it was more than double that much that what we thought that we would get. And we knew what we were doing. And the rest of the market were completely surprised. And for me, that was the breaking through, because till that day, there was the German radio market is very much driven by the publishing houses. They did a lot. They mobilized the politics that they have to be the first one who get the licenses, so that they have a because they saw the risk for the newspapers, and so they asked for the radio licenses. And I was somebody who was not in the radio. I was an enemy for them. And but through this success, they had no choice, because I had 60% of the Hamburg people under 30 years were listening daily to my radio station. and that is the target group for the advertising companies. Yeah? So it was clear they will talk to me and not to the others. And so they have to deconstruct the construction, how they built, which they created in the marketing field of radio business, and they have to let me sit on the table and give me my chair. And that was, so that is, I mean, success helps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? And I would say this first success was necessary for me also to create the next thing, to look for a new challenge, to do something new again. And that is, yeah, if you always fail, I mean, of course, you have to stand up, yeah, and try it again and again and again. But the first time when you recognize, okay, I have done it the right way, nobody expected, yeah, everybody thought you were completely crazy, and now they see the results. I mean, that is very nice.
Yeah, interesting, interesting. Yeah, we talked about a few things that came from as life stories. Now, I would like to tackle with Dr. Hoerr. You had the opportunity and chance, and also ability to receive funds of investors in the past, and you believe who should finance all those deals, relating, saying, I'm talking about projects like yours, Mrs. Birla's, like long-term, like which really tries to solve unprofitable long-term projects. So who should finance them? Governments or foundations or entrepreneurs? Who?
I think it's a mixture of financing. I think it depends on the stage where you are. So when we started the company, no biotech investor was financing us. They weren't believing it. So we were the crazy guys, and that's always an issue. But on the other hand, you prove that you can survive. So we went into service business. So we just sold RNA molecules. What we did for ourselves, we sold to customers, farmers, and so forth. So we tried to survive in doing service, doing the real business. Yeah, and then we spotted Dietmar Hopp as an entrepreneur, and so he. It also was a kind of different language than talking to the VC investors. So often I think you have to find your way. Who is the best in supporting you? So in our case, it was Dietmar Hopp, because he really wanted to move on and get a proof of concept, and he was our only investor until Gates Foundation was investing in. So and still he is our largest investor, 80%. He owns 80%. it's a kind of unusual way in our ways. There's a lot in the US, for example. There are a lot of biotech specialized investors going into that business, and they're doing a good job. So it depends where you come from, what kind of network you have. So for my instance, I think it was very important and valuable to have Dietmar Hopp and also have the Gates Foundation and Bill Gates and connections to these guys, because I also learned from these guys, for sure. So they are active. We can talk to these people, and we can adapt our business accordingly. So short-term investors, I think it's not maybe the best thing to invest into biotech, but I think in terms of overall investment, biotech is the way the area where I should go, because looking at Nasdaq, for example, biotech investments or biotech funds, they always are on the bright side, on the sunny side. Even during financial crisis, they were doing quite well. And there is a heterogeneity, so that of course not everybody reaches the market, but once a company reaches the market, you get easily a value of 10 billion. It's a number we're talking about, 10 or 20 billion, even further on. So these are the huge numbers, and they compensate for the failures. Also for a fund, they compensate for that. So I think it's not that risky as it sounds, since you constantly see progress, you constantly see clinical data where you stand, and you can really then tackle that. And if you do a failure in clinical trials, you see gaps, and then you just have to bridge the gaps. As you said, you have to stand up and say, well, what should I do? To take your brain how to do that, as we did as well. So you need to have these mistakes, but you need also to have patient investors. And it's more than a bet. It's really, you build on the next generation of therapies and the next generation of medicines, I think, and somehow we owe it to our society. We can't let children die like they do today. I think we all have to do something. And in Germany, when I go around and I talk to investors, they say, well, biotech is risky, I don't want to invest. I say, well, let's just look, the German pension funds, if they just invest 1% of their money into biotech, it's around about 5 to 7 billion, just in Germany. With 5 to 7 billion, you can do such a lot. Yeah, you can do such much more better than it's right now. So it's a lack of investment, it's a lack of trust of investors into biotech in Germany and also in Europe. I think we missed it a bit. We have to rebuild it. In the US, it's doing very well. You can really see that small biotechs, they get to giants, they are bought by pharmas for this kind of amounts, 10 billion plus. So it's a big business in US, and I think we have to cover it as well in Europe. It's very important to move in. So happy to talk to investors always, to have them also a part of the success story.
That is, I have an experience in that, because I tried to develop patents. I want to work together with inventors of good ideas, not only biotech, in every range. And I talked to people with money. And they said, they all said the same thing. They said, it's very interesting, it's very kind that you talk to me, but come back when you do something with houses, with buildings. So they don't want to invest in ideas or in new technologies. It's for the most, it's too risky. And maybe they don't have the overview by themselves, they don't feel secure. But that is a pity, because the American do, in the meanwhile also Chinese people do, exactly. And I think we have to take a risk. I mean, and to develop new things. Can't give that all away, because especially Germany is the country in the world, I think, in the proportion to the people, we have the most patents. We have the companies like Siemens and things like that, which have so many patents every day nearly, which they don't use because they can't do everything. And on the other hand, we have all these people sitting in the garage, and they have also good ideas. So,
I think the point that you made about investors, entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, doesn't matter, something like that. When we say risky, they call financial risky, but this is social and risky. They're looking at something that like they should not look at just financial risk, but also social risk. So what, for example, Mrs. Birla is dealing like really social risk for us, I mean, for our future. And yeah, when we say risk is not about just finance. I mean,
for me, I think what she's doing, I mean, that's the question you have to ask yourself. In what society do you want to live?
Absolutely.
And if the idea fits in that, then it can't be the wrong idea.
Exactly.
Where's the risk? Yeah, the risk is, and for me, my feeling, risk is something very good, because if you see the risk, you don't have the danger that you didn't get it. Yeah, so you have to solve the problem, and then you solve the risk. People which want to make money without risk, they will. It will surprise them when they have to imagine, oh, there was a risk, I didn't saw it. I mean, if you see the risk, you can do something against it.
Exactly.
I think people normally think about a risk only in terms of money and finance.
Exactly, this is what I wanted
which
to
is
say.
where the problem comes in actually, especially in something like what I am doing, because you have to be in it only when you have a heart, which is what we were saying yesterday, that only the person with a heart can even think of, say, funding us, for example, because there can never be a full return on something like this. It can never happen. So you got to get into it knowing that you're never going to get your full monies back. But then does everything have to work around money is the question that we need to ask,
Exactly.
actually. And if we're really out there to make a social impact, then I think we have to keep the money out of the equation and do it in order to really make the social impact, whether the money is coming or not, because then you're guaranteed that you are, yes, making a social impact. But if you're trying to make a social impact and also trying to get money out of it, then you're probably confused about what you really want to do and why are you doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it is hard. Actually, I want to bring His Excellency Minister Aspanis, he talked in a panel before you. Sometimes we really need to understand the needs of the world and shape it rightly, basically. Not just reading books and having standard things. Like we can't do that. Impact investing was not existent probably like as a term 100 years ago. Like it comes up just now, and there are people like you or someone who coins the term. So I would like to hear a little bit about the future and your thoughts. What do you want to do about MPower in the future? And I will ask the same question to other panelists too. And now I want to hear about what do you want to do with MPower? How do you see its future?
So, well, my vision for MPower is very clear. I really want to make it a very global movement, which is what we're working towards. So currently we work under 3 verticals. One is creating awareness about MPower, of course, but more about mental health and about mental illnesses. So that's a movement that we are doing, and I really do believe that, you know, we all are very small specks in the ocean, but it's only when each one of us put in our bits can we create an entire ripple and a wave. And that's what we're trying to do, is create a movement, get the whole community involved in it. Everybody has to take ownership, only then can it move forward. So that's one vertical. The second vertical is providing services, because just awareness, the awareness is very important, but after the awareness, then what? So in order to close the loop, we have to provide services. So that's psychological as well as psychiatric services to people who need it. That's the second vertical. And the third vertical is the outreach, where again we are going out, conducting workshops, conducting more training programs, so that we're, you know, keeping in theme with creating a whole ripple and getting the whole community involved in it, going out there and spreading the word and actually spreading content, talking about, you know, so say we may go to a corporate talking about different stresses, or go to schools trying to create awareness. So that's the third arm. So we're working with these 3 verticals, and the mission and the vision is basically to sort of grow each arm, have more centers, have more foundations, reach out to more people, to the people who can afford it as well as the people who are economically challenged, because I do believe that I think everyone has a right to lead a fulfilled and a productive life, no matter where you come from. So that's my vision for MPower.
Amazing. we wish you good luck, and we believe in that. And Mr. Hoerr, maybe you could talk about future of Curevac. This is really interesting for investors too, I think.
Well, it's amazing that you can deal with information. I think this really perfectly fits into the revolution what we see in industry, that we speak about artificial intelligence, that we speak about data mining. You know, we understand more and more how our body is regulated. And just think about, if you get ill, there's something wrong in the information of your body. You get cancer because cancer cells are not going to be controlled anymore because they're out of information, so they just grow. So you need to train the immune system, or you train also the cancer cells themselves to keep calm again, for example. That's the thing. Aging is something which is also controlled by a lot of information. We got older and older because things are changing in our body. So the vision is really that, of course, we start now with ordinary drugs, vaccines like flu or leprosy or rabies, things like that. But the next thing would be that we have a printer installed at a doctor's office, and the doctor can just print out individually the information your body needs. You just press it. And a 30-year-old man gets something different than a 60 or 80-year-old man. Mm-hmm. And my vision is really, since, you know, I think we can't avoid death. I think we are dying, and I think that's a fate of everybody and every individual here. But to keep on a healthy level, and I think that also goes in your directions, that you mentally, for example, you keep on a healthy level until you die, and you don't have this retards, you don't have Alzheimer's, things like that. And to cope with that, because it's so complex, I think there's no drug available. There won't be any one drug available. It will be a composition of many different treatments together, mixed together, and individualized together. Mm. So a doctor constantly watches you and prevents, before you get ill, he prevents it already in prescribing you the right drugs. And you can, you can use these RNA-based vaccines or these RNA-based drugs, because the body is used to use RNA every day in communicating within the cells, within the body. So you can just use the same and just type the information you want to get to the body. So I speculate whether pharma will cope with that in the end, or maybe different businesses will cope with that, maybe from the artificial intelligence, from the data, maybe even nutrition. I don't know, you know, but I think there's a huge disruption. There will be a huge disruption in medical treatments in the industry. And Curevac will play an important part of that. Yeah. So that's Curevac's story.
Yeah, interesting. So it's going to be an app or something connected to our bodies, or how do you imagine that?
Well, I think there's always, to me, I think there's always a doctor needed somehow, because it's very complex and should be somebody trained. You can't just order from an app. Maybe at, you know, if you get flu, or if you get kind of cold or things like that, maybe that's an app. But if you have cancer, things like that, Alzheimer's, you need to have really a solid and sound diagnostics. You should really see what happens here. Where's the lack of information, and then you should get this information printed out and sorted out by MD. So, but again, I think it gets cheaper because you don't need to have all the pharmacies anymore. You don't need to have the pharma industry anymore. So it gets, you know, also regulatory authorities, they have to cope with that. Exactly. How to approve this kind of drugs. Mm-hmm. So it's a complete different thinking. So I think there's a lot of challenges, but I think they will cope with that. Since it's proven that it works out like that, I think everybody works on that to break down the walls and get things happen like this. So there will be a disruption as always, and I think as we know, it gets faster and faster in this kind of thing, especially if you think about data. So I really believe that it's not too far away that we have different kind of treatments, and hopefully we can play a big role in that.
Yeah, great, thank you very much. My question to Mr. Frank Otto is about, you have invested in a number of companies, like you have opened and closed a lot of firms, enterprises. So what is your advice by bullet pointing to new starters like who has 10 employees, 15 employees, 50 employees, 100 employees, they just starting to their entrepreneurship journey. So what is your advice to them?
If they are already starters, I don't have to give so many advice because it's a very special atmosphere when you start a business and the people which are involved in that, and of course it's mostly more complicated than you thought in the beginning. So don't tell them how difficult it is. Yeah, so let them go, and they will find their way. So I wouldn't give advice. I sometimes had the problems that people came to me. And they explained me their business, and once I had in 1 week, that is long ahead, it was when the first big digital wave was, in 1 week 3 different kind of companies came to me and tell me how to make a digital record company. So I told them that they were not alone, just that they know that. But I wasn't sure who of them made it, and none of them 3 made it. So, okay. But they all learned a lot, and the person which were involved in that, they developed well. So I don't really have an advice. What I saw here now during the day, and what I think the whole idea is we talked about luxury, about technology, a lot about these things, and what I think there is this story. Do you know the story about the golden eating sticks? So it's an example. Gold is very hygienic. You don't have to do anything with it. If every child would get these eating sticks with the birth, yeah, so they are amortized when it's just before it comes to school. Because the wooden things, you always produce wood, yeah, so they become dirty, you have to throw them away, you have to replace them. So not the golden one, yeah? So it looks very decadent, but it is the most green possibility of eating sticks are the golden ones, and that is what luxury can do. Yes, so to find things which are very sustainable, and of course, in the beginning they look expensive, they are expensive, but at the end maybe they are worth. And technology is a thing. We are the humans, and technology always is not good and not bad. It's just what we are doing with it, and I think that in the meanwhile, the picture we have becomes brighter. We see more of the world. We see more of the problems of the world, and that has influence also in what we are doing with our technologies. And I think we will do better from day to day. It's a process. I only see it on a big scale, because when I was 18, 19, something like that, I was against, it was this time when everybody was against something. Yes, and I was against nuclear power. So Germany is now on the way to get rid of nuclear power. But it's not nuclear power, which I didn't like the risk. I didn't like how it is handled. But it's not the nuclear power. For example, if there's a meteorite coming on Earth, I would say nuclear power is a very, very good idea to get rid of this thing and to save the Earth. Yeah. So it's not the nuclear power at itself which is not good. It's what we are doing with it, and we have these ethic discussions a lot when internet came up, because the view how to use it are very different. We have very different views, and so in the last times for me, I often come back to the French Revolution, which it was also mentioned yesterday, because it's there the thoughts which have been started in these days. I think they are important for us here in Europe, especially in Europe, of course, but they are also something worth in other cultures. And because I feel that in all these thoughts there is something which means that we try to get a balance. And so also in our businesses now, I think we have that on mind, that we have a balance between making business and making profit. On the other hand, a balance what we are doing in the society, what we are doing in the market, so that it's in a balance and it's not only the making money machine.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting. I want just to, before closing the panel, I want to ask if there is a question from the, okay.
Thank you. Ghassan Hasbani, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Public Health of Lebanon. Thank you for this fantastic talk, but I have a very specific question continuing from our discussion in the previous panel, and that fits quite well with that. When we talk about investments into a business or a cause that can advance society significantly, disruptive, my question would be addressed to Mr. Hoerr. I think you're trying to attract investments in one of the most heavily regulated environments. Where do you think, besides regulations and changes in regulations, of course, where do you think governments at the decision-making level can support in an area like yours to make those investments less risky for the investors, as Mr. Otto had mentioned, make them as attractive as real estate, for example?
This is a really very interesting question from government official, and as offering his help.
Yeah. Well, it's more really generating an ecosystem, that investors can invest there. It's literally in Germany, it's not possible to invest into biotech. You have to invest in the Nasdaq, for example, at a public available company and stocks. In Germany, there are a couple of biotech companies on the stock exchange in Frankfurt, maybe 5, something like that. So there's no momentum. So I think you have to generate the momentum, and we had it in 2000, about 99, 2000. There was the Neue Markt. There was a lot of push to support startups. So it was the first run on IT at that time, but also biotech. And we had a lot of also American-based investors coming to Germany looking for opportunities. And suddenly it crashed. And we never succeeded. The crash is still there, in the minds of people. So it burned, it destroyed everything. So I think the mindset has to be different. So it has to be supported also by politicians. When we talk to politicians about biotech, they all think, in Germany at least, they think about green biotechnologies, which is a no-go in Germany. We all want to have the eco-food and nothing like that, the green technology. And they don't really get the impact on biotech in having a lot of, or getting a lot of solutions. Also in climate change, things like that. A lot of things where you can work on biotech. We have also heard the talk on the rubbish, on the Hans Roth was talking about it, where you can do an impact on using biotechnology as well. So I think there has to be a movement, there has to be a generational ecosystem. That means tax incentives, for example, for investors. That's very important. The tax story isn't good. If an investor has a major stake, is a major stakeholder in a biotech company, he can't get a tax reward for it. So he has to cope with all the losses of the company over the years and can't really get a reward of that. There are lots of things there gonna be changed. But I think major thing is really, in my eyes, it's a mindset of everybody. Because when you have the mindset, you can then do all the tax, all the laws and all the regulations, things like that. So we see a start in the authorities, in the regulatory authorities, at FDA and EMA regulating drugs, that they have to think about the individualized therapy approaches. It's not anymore one fits for all. It has to be individualized things, and it's completely new, a new thinking. How to do that? How I can regulate you? What kind of drugs you get, or you and you and you? How to do that? So things are really going in this direction. So I think there needs to be a support in really thinking about the future, thinking about the disruption and how to cope with that and how to can support from the government level. It's not just flowing, funding things, giving money and here. We are all no beggars. We don't need money because we just need the environment, the ecosystem, and then we can go.
Yeah. Same thing I think applies not only biotech but also the initiative that Mrs. Birla is leading. She basically does the job of a certain level of government or philanthropic institutions like she does herself, like with her own capital. And I think the tax issues should be part of the same problem also, considering the all problems like you mentioned, not only biotech but say mental health, I don't know, maybe this environmental cleaning, all this.
The entire ecosystem actually. We have to create the entire ecosystem. And I think there are times when the government needs to step in, because if there are certain, if they can bring about certain policy change, then it would make it that much easier. But like I said, because it is so heavily taboo and just not spoken about, it just takes that much longer to, try to even bring about a change. But yes, if the government is able to bring about certain changes, where there is advocacy and policy change, it will really go a long way.
Just to point out on that point, we've just introduced mental health for free as part of our primary care across the country.
Right, yeah.
And we were thought to be mad actually by doing that, but
if our government was to do that, it will be great. I mean, even at the moment, the government is spending a very, very, very small amount of the entire budget. So, I mean, something like offering it free would really escalate the whole advancement, and the impact would be at another level.
Yeah. I want to thank to our panelists. It was really very interesting discussion. We have now a break, coffee break, so you may have some coffee, then we'll have our another panel. Thank you very much again. I want to say thank you.